Take a look at Hurricane Milton, a Category 5 storm. Look at the winds up to 180 miles per hour. There have only been 8 other hurricanes in recorded history that have gotten to 180 or stronger. It is going to weaken a bit before it makes its way to the Florida Peninsula, but we are still expecting a major hurricane as it makes landfall, and it should maintain hurricane status even as it emerges into the Atlantic Ocean. Already, we do have hurricane warnings and tropical storm warnings that have been posted for Florida as we're expecting landfall here. And again, that quick movement across the peninsula means that hurricane force winds are likely going to be felt across all of central Florida. Storm surge values, these have been adjusted slightly upward with 10 to 15 feet of storm surge expected for Tampa Bay and points to the south, which is where we are expecting the landfall, likely at or maybe just to the north of Tampa Bay. We are also expecting some heavy rainfall to move across the state. As much as 5 to 7 inches of rain could fall. There could be some locally heavy amounts, much more than that.
And move over to this camera shot here. We are looking at a major hurricane, Category 5 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. It has a very small, compact eye, and these systems that have that smaller, compact nature can ramp up very quickly. And with the rapid intensification that's occurred today, we've gone from a Category 1 at 1 a.m. to a Category 5 here this evening. Winds have doubled. They've gone from 90 to 180, and the pressure is falling. We have the new update from the National Hurricane Center as of the 7 o'clock advisory here for you as well, and it is a Category 5 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. The environment continues to look very moist. There is some drier air to the north and west, and that will come into play later. But for now, we expect it to maintain its strength as a major hurricane and possibly may do so all the way up until landfall. Winds at 180, it's Category 5, and the pressure 897. So we were at 906 with the pressure as of the 4 o'clock advisory. Now we're at 897, and the motion is east at about 10 miles an hour. The water temperatures support intensification in the short term. There is usually a tongue of water temperatures that are not quite as warm right off the northeast tip of the Yucatan, and this may move through that region briefly before moving back out over the Gulf Loop current, which has recovered nicely with the water temperatures in the wake of Hurricane Helene. All right, so how does it rate on the scale known as the Saffir-Simpson scale? Saffir-Simpson scale is a pretty inadequate scale. It only rates hurricanes based on the maximum sustained winds. It does not take into account the potential impacts. And right now it is above 157, so it is a Cat 5. And what kind of impacts will we see and where's it going? So let's look at the forecast track here. And we have it tracking across the southern Gulf, right off the tip of the Yucatan. I doubt it comes ashore on the Yucatan. I guess that's possible because it has wobbled a little to the right, but looking at it, we expect it to generally be over the warm waters of the Gulf, and it could easily be a Cat 4 or 5 hurricane up through tomorrow afternoon. There's the potential that shear and dry air will weaken it some as it's making its approach to Florida's coast, but I don't expect a lot of change in the intensity because, as we saw with Hurricane Katrina, as it worked its way in, it was a Category 3, but it had the surge of a 5. So a lot of times these storms develop the storm surge way out in the Gulf, and when they come ashore, they're still going to come ashore with that type of surge if it only weakens over the last 12 hours or so right before landfall. So this is an alarming situation. We may have an expanding wind field too for Florida's peninsula, meaning it could actually get larger as it weakens. I know that seems counterintuitive, but the size of a hurricane matters a lot. And the wider the wind field, the more areas that will be infected and the longer those areas would be impacted. Here is the latest graph model. This is our in-house futurecast. It did really well with Hurricane Helene. This is not an exact forecast. It's just one suggested outcome, one set of suggested outcomes, but it gives you a good idea of how you can visualize what this thing would look like. And so what the futurecast does is it emulates the way the radar and the satellite would look as it's working across the Gulf. And we see the potential for a wider eye on Wednesday. You can see the eye gets larger. That's that expansion of the wind field. We do expect shear and dry air to perhaps knock out some of the convection on the south side of the storm, but it may not change the winds much. And we still expect it to be a major hurricane at landfall. We've got it close to making landfall at around 10 p.m. on Wednesday night. And if it hits around Tampa, the surge could be significant from Fort Myers to Sarasota and all the way up to Tampa. This is a highly populated part of Florida's coast. Now, will we see impacts here? Well, we're going to have rough surf, and we will have rip currents, and the rip current danger will be high at our beaches. But we expect to see a dry air front moving through, and so you'll notice temperatures around 64 degrees tomorrow morning in Mobile. And the mornings will get better as things go on. Now, we could see some breezy conditions here with northeast winds on Wednesday, with the core of the storm over the eastern Gulf, and then we have it coming ashore. This is the GFS model around midnight, very similar to what our graph futurecast showed. And then it works up towards Florida's Atlantic coast, and the core of the heavy winds will not be offshore until Thursday based on this model here. This will deepen the trough a little and allow for lows in the 50s here by the end of the week and into the weekend. All right, model tracks. This is the spaghetti model. These are the spaghetti model plots, and most of those are within the cone. And there's still a pretty wide spread of models, anywhere from Crystal River all the way down to, it looks like, about the Fort Myers area. So, still some uncertainty as to where it'll exactly come ashore, and there'll certainly be that situation, especially because of the angle the storm is approaching and the orientation of the coastline. There could be quite a bit of difference in landfall outcomes. But ultimately, we expect this small, compact wind field to grow in size. And you can see that happening here, and then especially here. The tropical storm force winds could extend from near Miami and south of Chokoloskee all the way up past Jacksonville and into southern Georgia, which is a much larger wind field. And the hurricane force winds, I expect a really strong tropical storm by the time this thing moves out over Florida's Atlantic coast, but they still will be a factor. What about storm surge? Well, I'm going to zoom in and then I'm going to zoom out. So right now, the Tampa area around 12 feet could be as high as 15 feet. There's also, anywhere where you see the purple, the potential of that 12-foot surge. So that includes Pine Island and up to close to the Steinhatchee River. And also, very importantly, Sarasota, Venice, Fort Myers, areas down near Boca Grande, Cape Coral. A lot of this area here could be heavily impacted. So we are looking at areas even well south of Tampa with significant surge, and even significant surge down around Marco Island and Chokoloskee. I know that's a long ways off from where the center comes ashore, but it could be problematic. All right, I wanted to give you an idea of what we're going to see locally, while our neighbors to the east and south will see potentially a substantial hurricane. We have some delightful weather tonight. Our lows will be down around 60 in Citronelle, Bay Minette at 61. You probably won't need a jacket tomorrow morning in Baldwin County, but we still will see very cool morning lows. And in Pensacola it's 65, but 60 in Walnut Hill and Jay. So we're really cashing in on some early October weather here. And this is our first real big cool air push of the fall season. 55 in Thomasville, 58 in Grove Hill, 60 in McIntosh, 59 in Fruitdale. Leakesville at around 60 in the morning, 60 in Loosedale, and 65 in Pascagoula. What a great front. And there's more where this came from. While we are looking at potential catastrophic impacts from a major hurricane to our south and east, look at our 7-day forecast. Beautiful sunny skies. Thursday and Friday, the lows will start trending in the 50s. We could have 50s in the mornings, and this is down near the coast. 83 for a high Friday, 81 Saturday. So expect a much better weather pattern for us. But it's just not a good situation having such a substantial hurricane in the Gulf. If you're just joining us live, I want to put the coordinates and statistics up for you here. 180 with the winds, Category 5, pressure 897, so the pressure has fallen. We may see a little increase in the winds just based on that pressure fall. And the track includes most of Florida's Gulf Coast on the west side of the peninsula. So that's going to be from the Big Bend down to Cape Coral. This does not include Destin or Pensacola, but it will be a serious situation, could be a catastrophic situation for Central Florida and South Florida. Something to watch as we go through the next 2 days. We'll be closely tracking Milton here on Fox 10 News, on our social platforms, and also on Fox 10 News tonight at 9 and in the morning with meteorologist Matt Barentine on our morning show. We'll continue to monitor Milton very closely for you here on Fox 10. All right, I'm going to leave this up so you can see the satellite picture for a second. Thanks for joining us.
At the 10 a.m. numbers here on Hurricane Milton, and it continues to be terrible news. I mean, this thing cranked up 90 miles per hour over 24 hours. That is beyond extreme rapid intensification. It formed a pinhole eye last night, and that means it was very tightly wound, and that allowed the winds to just start screaming around the center of that circulation. And boy, you can really see this on the 3D imagery, how that eye there has developed here going into this morning. So it is a really bad situation here. It's shaping up a nightmare scenario for parts of Central Florida, because that's likely where it's going to make impact. And it's got 155 mile per hour winds now as the 10 a.m. advisory. That is 1 mile an hour away from being Category 5. So this will become a Category 5 storm. Once again, extremely powerful. It's undergoing once again, an extreme rapid intensification process. Still moving to the east-southeast at around 9 miles per hour. Check out the latest path from the National Hurricane Center, and they have it listed as a Category 3. Now, you can see the Category 5 showing up on there. Boy, it's rare to see a forecast path in the Gulf of Mexico with a Category 5 storm on it, but that's what we have with Milton. You can see 160 mile per hour winds Tuesday at 6 a.m. Now, you do notice at landfall, they have it as a Category 3, so they do have it weakening. And the reason why is because some dry air is going to get wrapped into it. So we're pretty confident there will be some weakening before it makes landfall, but ultimately that's not likely to make a whole lot of difference to folks in Florida. They're going to see the landfall of a major hurricane, and also whatever storm surge it builds up as a Category 4, Category 5 storm will still be intact as it makes landfall. So we talk, so the conditions will still be pretty horrendous in and around Central Florida, wherever it makes landfall. Now, exactly where it makes landfall will be super critical to folks over there in the Florida Peninsula. Obviously, one county difference makes a huge difference depending on where people live. And obviously, Tampa Bay is where the most population is at. And they haven't taken a direct hit from a major hurricane in more than 100 years. Helene gave them 6 feet of storm surge, and that caused major problems. This one's likely to do a lot more than that. So the tropical storm force winds, if there's anything good about this storm, is that it's not very large. It's going to be a fairly compact storm. The hurricane force winds, I think, are only about 35 to 40 miles away from the center at this point. So it's not a very large storm, but obviously wherever it makes landfall, it's going to do massive damage. Now, we are going to be protected. It can't make a big turn to the north. It cannot turn to the north and head towards us. And the reason why is because there's a cold front, and it's already here. It's going to be dropping even farther to the south. That will push it into the west coast of Florida. It can't jump over that cold front. That's not how physics works. So it'll head towards the west coast of Florida. Now, exactly where, obviously, there's still a lot of uncertainties. And like I said, even a few miles will make a difference to the folks that live there, obviously. And it could be really the nightmare scenario for Tampa Bay. If it comes in at the right angle, we could be talking about 20 feet of storm surge into Tampa Bay. And here's all the different models, and they really kind of have like 3 different scenarios here. The top scenario, the northernmost scenario here that you see with these forecast paths just north of the Tampa area, those would be pretty much the nightmare scenario for Tampa, because that would push a lot of water into Tampa Bay. Now, if it comes in just a little bit to the south, say around Sarasota, it'll still be pretty rough in Tampa, but they'll have offshore winds and they won't have the level of storm surge, and so that will, that will lower the damage in and around the Tampa Bay area. If it goes all the way down here around Naples, that would probably be the best case scenario for Florida, because that would put a lot of the worst weather out over the Everglades. But regardless, none of these is a good scenario. They're all bad. It's just a pick your poison type of scenario here. Which one do you want? The storm surge very well could be epic. Once again, Tampa has been lucky, has been missed over and over and over again by major hurricanes. They've been brushed by a lot of big storms, but they have not taken a direct hit in more than 100 years. And as of now, the Hurricane Center is predicting as much as 12 plus feet of storm surge in and around Tampa Bay. But if that storm comes in at the right angle, 20 feet of storm surge is not out of the question in Tampa Bay. That would be catastrophic. I mean, we're talking millions of people in that area, and quite a few of them be affected. Now, of course, too, it's not just where it makes landfall. This is likely basically to track up right up Interstate 4 through Orlando. And Orlando and other areas inland will see massive problems. For us, the only thing that we see out of this is a high rip current risk. That's it. The cold front protects us. We actually get beautiful weather here. The only thing that impacts us is the rough surf. That's it. There's the front. It's already dropping to the south. It'll drop through our area today. Now, it's not a real powerful front. Don't expect our temperatures to start dropping right away. We're still going to hit 90 degrees this afternoon. It's still going to be pretty hot and toasty. And as we look over the long-range forecast, you don't see a big dip in our temperatures. They're going to kind of just gradually come down. So we're kind of gliding into fall. But look at our forecast over the next 10 days. It's gorgeous. We don't have any rain on there. We have lots of sunshine. We have really pleasant temperatures. I mean, it is just gorgeous. So, we're going to be feeling a little guilty up here, I think, because once again, they're going to be dealing with the landfall of that major hurricane just to the south of us down in the west coast of Florida. Boy, that is just a rough situation. The 10 a.m. numbers, 155 mile per hour winds, Category 4 storm, almost a Category 5. This has been rapidly intensifying. It is a nightmare scenario for the west coast of Florida. Keep those folks in your prayers, and of course, we'll keep you updated here on Fox 10. Looking in, here is the 3D satellite. The 3D really gives us a good look. I like to see this as a meteorologist, taking a look at these 3D imagery, just because it kind of helps really see like what's happening in the structure of the storm. And what we've seen overnight last night was a pinhole eye form. In other words, a very small eye. Now, because the storm has a small eye doesn't mean it's weak. In fact, it means the opposite. It means it's really wrapping up, and we're seeing some very strong winds. It had a 9 millibar pressure drop in 1 hour. That is incredibly fast, rapid intensification with this system. So this is an ugly one, folks. And it's going to be tracking its way eastward across the Gulf of Mexico and headed for a west coast of Florida landfall. Oh boy, they just updated this. Just so we're getting intermediate updates from this. And this one just, I just saw this one just came in. Now up to 150 mile per hour winds. Now a Category 4 storm, another major pressure drop. So every time the hurricane hunters go in there and they fly around, they just keep finding this thing just rapidly. This is intensifying at a rate that I don't know if we've quite seen before. I'm going to have to go back and kind of look into that, because this one has really intensified overnight last night and into this morning. 150 mile per hour winds, only a few miles an hour away from being a Category 5. Looks to be almost certain to be a Category 5 strength. We'll get a new update here on this forecast path soon, too, as well. You can see they have it listed as a Category 4 for the next, day and a half, but obviously it's going to be doing some fluctuations with its intensity as it heads over towards Florida. There is some hope of some weakening, though, before landfall, but if it's a powerful Category 5, before, just a little ways out, then it's not going to have a whole lot of time to weaken. Let's go ahead and check out one of the models. This is our IBM graph model. It's done really well with the forecast path of the last several storms. So that's why we're going to continue to show this one. This shows Thursday morning headed for a west coast of Florida landfall. Something critical to note here, what we're seeing, we've been seeing this in a lot of the modeling, is dry air getting wrapped into the storm. So that's why the Hurricane Center does have it weakening somewhat before landfall. The problem is it's probably not going to make a whole lot of difference because this storm is going to be very powerful. It's also going to be having a very large storm surge with it. Now the storm surge is going to be probably something of historic levels here for the west coast of Florida, and it's going to be super critical exactly where it makes landfall. It goes in a little bit south of Tampa. Tampa will be spared, but other spots to the south will get hit hard. If it goes in Tampa Bay or just north of Tampa Bay is going to see a storm surge like it's never been recorded before here in this area. So once again, this is going to be obviously a terrible situation for the folks in West Florida. Basically, there's I-4. It looks like it's going to basically travel up I-4. So not only Tampa will get hit hard, but Orlando's right here. Orlando will get hit hard as well, maybe even Daytona Beach on the east side of Florida. But probably the worst of it's going to be right where it makes landfall. And here's from the National Hurricane Center. This is Tampa Bay, and that purple is 12 plus feet. We could be talking as much as 20 feet of storm surge. They had 6 feet during Helene, and that caused widespread issues. Double, triple that is easily possible with this storm. So once again, just a nightmare scenario setting up for the Tampa Bay region. High rip current risk, that's the only thing that we're going to be seeing out of this. We have a cold front dropping down. That's what's going to force that storm to the west. It can't jump over this cold front, so that's why it will not be headed into our area. There's no risk of it turning northward and heading towards us. Today we're out ahead of the front, so our temperatures are going to be pretty toasty, up near 90, but it's a sunny day, it's a pretty day, it's a quiet day here for your Monday. Quiet as well as we head into the evening, no problems here. If you got something to do after work, looks really good as we head into the evening. Here's your 7-day outlook. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to kind of glide into fall here. We're not going to see a big dip, but we are going to be seeing slightly cooler temperatures over the next few days, lower humidity. It'll feel pretty comfortable. The mornings will be just absolutely fantastic. The evenings will be fantastic. Gets a little warm in the afternoons, but still pretty nice. Lots of sunshine and dry conditions. And, once again, we'll be getting basically beautiful weather up here while folks to our south are going to be dealing with that major hurricane making landfall. Here from the hurricane hunters flying around inside of Milton, we saw a pinhole eye forming overnight last night. That's usually the sign of a rapidly strengthening hurricane, and that's what we got. It is now officially a major hurricane, a Category 3 with winds of 120 miles per hour. So there it goes. You can see the little symbol switch over. This is a loop, and it goes from 1, 2, then eventually to Category 3 strength. And now you can really see this little pinhole eye. That's what's developing overnight last night. That pinhole eye means these winds are really wrapping around and strengthening, and that is what we've been seeing. And now we do have a major hurricane with Milton, 120 mile per hour winds. The pressures have dropped to 954 millibars. Now, some of the modeling suggests this could ramp up to a Category 5 storm. So this is going to become a very powerful system. It already is. And it's going to continue to track off right now to the east-southeast, but eventually it'll make a northeast turn and head up towards the peninsula of Florida. Now, the official forecast track calls for a Category 4 storm with winds getting up to 145 miles per hour, but it does show some weakening right before landfall because some dry air is likely to get wrapped into it. Unfortunately, though, because it's going to get so strong, it's not going to have enough time to wind down a whole lot. In fact, it'll likely still be at least a Category 3 at landfall. Now that landfall, the spread on the forecast is still pretty wide, so we're still trying to get some more details on exactly where it's going to make landfall, and that'll be super critical, especially to Tampa Bay. That is really going to be the most critical part of all of this, because this is obviously a major population center, and they haven't been hit by a major hurricane in more than 100 years. And the possibilities of the storm surge in Tampa Bay are pretty epic with this storm. If it makes sort of a path that goes pretty much near Tampa Bay or just to the north of Tampa Bay, they could be seeing storm surge in excess of 12 feet. Now, they saw 6 feet during Helene, and that caused major issues. So double or more is a very real possibility. And once again, there is a lot of population in and around this area that has never experienced a major hurricane. They've been brushed, but they've never taken a direct impact in more, or at least more than 100 years. So folks that are living there have never been through a direct hit of a major hurricane. High rip current risk, that's the only impacts that we'll see a part of the northern Gulf Coast. This front right here, that's going to be pushing on past us later on today. That is what's going to protect us from the storm. The storm can't jump over that cold front, so there's no way it makes a big turn to the north and heads towards us. That will not happen. All right, just not going to happen. It'll hit the west coast of Florida. There's still, once again, a pretty wide spread along the west coast of Florida, but that's where it's headed. Temperatures for us today, it's going to be nice, but it will be hot, near 90 this afternoon. We're out ahead of the front today, so we still get up to around 90 this afternoon. Then this evening, really pleasant. Temperatures dropping back off into the 70s, so a nice night if you got some things to do here after work. And look at this long-range forecast for us. I don't know, kind of a little bit of a guilt complex for us because, once again, another major hurricane making landfall to our neighbors to the east, and here we are. And we're going to have beautiful weather. We're going to kind of glide into fall. It's not like a big dip. It's not like we're going to go off the edge of a temperature cliff here next couple of days. It still stays pretty mild, pretty warm in the afternoons in the mid 80s. The mornings, though, will be super pleasant. The humidity is going to be way down. It is going to be really nice. Then the afternoons will eventually come down to the low 80s as well. So kind of like gliding into fall. Beautiful weather, though, for us all week long. Lots of sunshine and really great conditions on our part of the Gulf Coast. All right, checking out the satellite. Of course, we are keeping an eye on, this is Milton. It's down into the southern Gulf of Mexico right now. You can see it's got a small eye. It's a smaller storm than Helene. That's good in the sense that it can't spread damage quite as wide, but bad in the sense that small storms can spin up very fast. And that's exactly what we anticipate with this one. It's going to be going into major hurricane strength. The forecast, though, is for some slight weakening just before landfall. 100-mile-per-hour winds. It is a Cat 2 storm. I'm moving to the east-southeast at 8 miles per hour. It's eventually going to make a northeasterly turn. You can see Category 4 strength. Some slight weakening just before landfall, but regardless, it is going to be a powerful storm when it hits the west coast of Florida. It's still a pretty wide spread with the forecast cone, and that is going to be really important for Florida. It's going to make it really challenging as well for the evacuation orders here in Florida, trying to figure out exactly who to get out of the way, because wherever this makes landfall, obviously the storm surge is going to be epic and they are going to want to get folks out, but it's going to be a pretty wide area and it's going to be very difficult to figure out exactly where to post those evacuations. So that is what they are going through today in Florida. It's going to be a very bad situation for them. Once again, though, for us, we're not going to be impacted by this. We're going to have beautiful weather this week. I have a front pushing on down, and we're going to be on the other side of the front. There is the storm. This is the Graph IBM model. This one has done a very good job in the last few hurricanes of tracking where exactly they make landfall. This one's actually done better than some of the other models, so this is why I'm going to be showing this one a lot. There it is. This is midnight going into early Thursday morning, and here's Tampa Bay, and you can see the storm making basically a beeline for near Tampa Bay. Even if a slight push to the south of Tampa Bay would save Tampa Bay from the worst of the impacts, but obviously a direct hit or something just to the north of it would give them massive storm surge in and around Tampa Bay, and obviously that is a huge population center, and they have never experienced a major, well, at least it's been more than 100 years since they've experienced the landfall of a major hurricane in the Tampa Bay area. They've been brushed a lot of times, there have been a lot of close calls, but they haven't had a direct hit in more than 100 years. And there it is. It's not, like I said, not as big as Helene, but big enough to cause major issues along the west coast of Florida. So here's that spread in the models. Like I said, it's a pretty wide spread, and boy, that is going to be really important for the folks here along the west coast, which one of those exact tracks plays out. So we still have some uncertainties in the modeling here, basically because of the timing of the cold front that we're going to have coming through our area. Only impacts that we see: high rip current risk next several days. If we can keep folks out of the water, we will be doing good. There's the cool front that's providing us the protection. It's north of us right now, so we're pretty warm today, but things cool off a little bit in the coming days. So we still get near 90 this afternoon, mostly sunny skies. Really turns out to be a nice day for us, just a bit on the hot side across our area. Then look what happens in the coming days. Mid 80s, low 60s in the morning. And then later in the week, we get even a little bit cooler as we drop off in lower 80s. But you can see for us, no rain, lots of sun, really beautiful conditions, kind of a transition here between summer and fall as we see our temperatures gradually cooling off in the coming days and looking really, really nice.